Hey, Trailblazers, this is Jason, your host of the Trailblazing Texas Podcast. Before we jump into our latest episode, I've got some incredible news for you. Are you gearing up for your next big hike or backpacking trip? Well, we at Trailblazing Texas Podcast have partnered up with Trekker Joe's, the ultimate Texas outfitter, to bring you something I feel absolutely special. Listeners, you of the Trailblazing Texas Podcast can now get a one-time 15% off their gear purchases at Trekker Joe's. That's right, whether you're a first-time customer at Trekker Joe's or a repeat customer like me, you can save big and hit the trails well prepared. So upon checkout, use code TTP15 to claim your 15% discount and in the process support an amazing local Texas business. So happy trails, and don't forget to tell your hiking buddies. Now on with the episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas Podcast, where we embark on a journey through our diverse Texas landscapes and breathtaking trails while always engaging with our amazing Texas hiking community. So settle in, tighten up those bootlaces, and get ready for the thrilling tales awaiting for you on this episode. So as you mentioned earlier, you didn't stop your through hike of the AT, you just paused it. What was that moment like for you when you came to that realization that, it's time to go back home?
Well, I've always said that, through hiking, long distance hiking is more mental than it is physical. Whenever you are doing a long distance hike like that, you start getting into shape and you start getting, your body starts getting used to, the grind that it goes through. But the hardest part of a through hike is the mental and emotional. And so I had my oldest grandson was graduating from high school, and I knew I was going to have to go, come back to California from the East Coast to go to his graduation. And so anyway, I got a ticket and I was hoping to fly in, go to the graduation, and then fly back so I wouldn't, kind of get used to being off trail. But it didn't work. I had to get a ticket, and I think it was like 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks before I could fly back. I had to get a round trip ticket. And so anyway, I got home and I started spending time with my family and my grandkids. And I started sleeping in a real bed, eating real food. And, I just got out of the through hike mentality. And so when I got back on trail, it was just so hard to get back in the swing of things like that. And then, because I took off so much time off of trail, I got into Pearisburg and I sat down. I said, "All right, Rev, you're gonna have to figure out where you are, and then figure out, okay, if you do like 20 miles a day, where will you be, at the end of your hike, or are you going to be able to finish it?" And so anyway, I figured out where I was and where I should be in order to finish by, and another thing is I set an arbitrary date of finishing by September the 1st. Now, again, that was not it wasn't impossible when I started. I started on April the 2nd. And so, it was plenty enough time for me to finish. In fact, I figured that it would, if I did 14 miles a day, I would be able to finish in no zeros, which is impossible. But I figured if I did 14 miles a day, I'd be able to finish by September the 1st. And so that was kind of in my mind, when I wanted to finish. I didn't want to go too much longer than that. And so anyway, I sat down and I figured where I was and where I should be in order to finish by September 1st. And I figured I was about 400 to 500 miles behind where I should be. And so anyway, the thought entered my mind, you're never going to finish by September 1st. And so that just kind of overwhelmed me, and it was kind of like kind of like the devil angel sitting on one shoulder and the godly angel sitting on the other shoulder, and the devil was just saying, "You ain't gonna be able to finish. You might as well just go ahead and go on home," And so anyway, that mental, emotional, whatever you want to call it, started playing with my mind, and I lost all motivation. And so I remember getting out on the trail again and going, and it was raining, and I didn't get my tent up in time, and so I was all wet and everything. And so I was laying in my tent, and I thought, I'm just going to go home, and I'll just, continue where I left off, and I'll continue next year. So I called my wife and I told her my decision. She said, if that's what you feel like you need to do, then, go ahead and do it. And so anyway, I hiked back to where I started from that morning in Parisburg. And I got on the phone and called my airline or American Airlines and got a ticket back home. But yeah, it was really fun. Now, to be honest with you, I was only home for maybe like a week when I thought to myself, what have you done? You could have gone as far as you could and just maybe, got in some more miles and stuff like that, and maybe not finish the trail, but at least gone as far as you could. But I'm telling you, Jason, the mental part of through hiking is so much stronger than the physical part. And that's what happened. I got bummed out. I got demotivated, if that's a word. And I just decided, hey, I'm going to just throw in the towel. And that's what I did.
So I had not a through hike, but we had it was a 114-mile hike through New Mexico down into Texas through the Guadalupe Mountains, and we were going to dump out at this highway. Leading up to to this trip, like the day before, we were out caching water in New Mexico. Well, Todd had already cached the water in New Mexico, but we were up in the Guads because there's no water out there, so we were caching. And it was, probably 20s and 30s, just Fahrenheit, just perfect weather for the Guads, because even if it's freezing, there's no shade hardly, and that sun is just cooking you. And so it was awesome, man. The next day it was up in the 80s, and starting through the Guadalupe Ridge Trail up in New Mexico, there is no shade. And so we made it about 70 miles. We got into McKittrick Canyon. We stopped. We were sitting on the porch, Pratt's cabin, and Todd and I just looked at each other, and I just looked at him and said, "I'm done." Like, I never thought that I would just cave into the mental aspect.
Yeah.
And it was easy. I just said, "I'm done."
Yeah.
And we were expecting weather in the 20s and 30s. It's in the 80s. It's hot for the Guads. The sun's just cooking you. And as soon as I said that, Todd goes, "That's all I needed to hear. I'm done too. Let's go." And
yeah.
And you're exactly right. The moment that I got home, so it's a 10-hour drive for me to get home from the Guads, I started going, what in the heck did I just do? How could I have let that mental weakness, I guess you could, for lack of a better term, dictate the end of a trip? We were not in any danger. Like, of course it's hot, but we had, tons of water cached all over the park. It was just like, I guess, just the discomfort. We just said, yeah, we're done.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, when you lose that motivation, you're done for. It affects it affects your body, really.
Yeah.
But you got to be motivated to. I mean, what else causes you to make your body get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, put your headlamp on, get out of your sleeping bag, pack everything up, and start hiking before the sun comes up, and then and not stopping? I mean, what is it that causes your body to go through what you put it through, except for that mental motivation that you have? You got to be motivated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you lose that motivation, that's it.
And man, I was so disappointed in myself. And I mean, even on the drive home, I called my wife Lori, and I'm like, yeah, we're pulling it because of the heat and stuff. And as I'm telling her this, I'm just thinking, what did I just do?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So if you look at the AT pause, we'll call it, was there anything that the trail gave you, even though you didn't finish? Is there any, I don't know, lessons learned or experiences, growth?
Oh yeah. I mean, good night. 636 miles is what I did of the AT, the first 636 miles. And so, good night. Yeah, I learned all kinds of things. I guess the biggest thing that I learned is that you cannot compare trails. Okay. My first trail, my first love, was the Pacific Crest Trail. I mean, it's right in my backyard. And so I decided, I retired in 2017. I'd been pastoring for 41 years. And so I decided if I'm going to do a long distance through hike, I was going to have to retire, because it's kind of hard to, be gone from your congregation for about 6 months, and I don't think they would take very kindly to me taking off for that long. So anyway, I had to retire in 2017. And so I got all my ducks in a row and everything. And so, and then 2020, I took off and started hiking the PCT. But it was a different trail than the AT. And I knew that going into it, but I guess I just got overwhelmed by it. The first 700 miles of the Pacific Crest Trail is like it is in Texas. It's wide open. It's expansive. You climb to the top of a mountain and you can just look out and see forever. When you're on the AT, you do a climb of 3,000 feet, you get to the very top, and all you see is a bunch of trees, Now, again, a lot of people, they get really bummed out by that and say, man, I'm in a green tunnel. Is there the sun out? And is there any kind of views up here? But that's just the way the AT is. There are some beautiful views on the AT, but the majority of it is a green tunnel. And so I had to realize that people ask me, they say, well, what should you like better, the AT or the PCT? That's like asking, who's your favorite child? You don't have any favorite children,
None that you would admit to on a podcast.
Yeah, right. Or to them, but every trail's different. I did the Ireland Way, and it's 629 miles, I think, over 1,000 kilometers from the very southern part of Ireland to the very top of Ireland, to the North Atlantic up in Ireland. And but it was just totally different. It rained almost all the time. You would hike through bogs, and I mean, you'd get up to your ankles and your knees, and just bog is what they call it over there. You hike through farmers' fields and stuff like that. I mean, it's just so different. There's a lot of road walking. It's so different than the PCT or the AT. And then again, I did a through hike of the Pinhoti Trail, and it's very, very similar to the AT. But every trail is different. You can't compare them.
No.
It's just different environments, different perspectives, and stuff like that. And so that was the one big thing that I learned is that hey, it's not going to be the same as the PCT. You're just going to have to accept it for what it is.
Yeah. And kind of hearing the story about your attempt to through hike on the AT, and now you're back and kind of can think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Has it changed how you define a success on a trail? Like that whole experience? Meaning that, you stopped it, you paused it, everything that you faced, but you still got stuff out of it, right? Like it was still.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always heard that you're only a failure when you don't get back up again, when you fall. And so that's why, I did a video on why I paused my through hike of the AT instead of saying I quit, because when you quit, you quit. You don't do it anymore. Well, in next year, 2026, I'm going to resume, which means you're going to start again. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to resume my through hike of the AT. And again, I've seen a lot of people that have had to quit a through hike, or I'm sorry, had to pause their through hike, and they make a video and they say, why I quit the AT. Well, I didn't quit it. I'm still going to do it next year. Now, when I finish the AT, then I'll be able to say that I completed the AT. But for right now, I'm on pause. It's just
I think I have a good friend in Washington State, John, and he kind of taught me a lesson or he was just tired of listening to me complain. But I had a goal to climb / hike the 10 highest peaks in Texas, and some of it is a little bit of climbing and route navigate, no trails, and it's some of it's pretty tough to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point in this journey where it was just failure after failure after failure, and so I was on the phone with him and just saying, man, it's just I only have this amount of time to get out to the quads. You don't want to be out there in the summer because it's hot, like deadly hot. And, I had this limited amount of time. You meet people and they're into it, and you kind of like subconsciously vet them. Like, okay, are they going to be worth it? Or facilitate the success. And just kept having failures after failures or not making the objectives. And he just said, hey, he goes, how boring would your adventures be if you were always successful?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, John, you're right as always. And so, that really changed what I define success on a trail is.
Right.
And for me, it's not about the destination. It's totally about the journey. But as I'm getting older, I'm in my 50s. It's, to me, success is just getting out.
Yeah, that's right.
Just, getting my stuff together and just getting out. Because like you said, sometimes there's Hallmark movies playing in the background. You got, like there's so many things that grandkids, your kids, my, and there's just so many things to, that, you could be doing. And it, to me, just making that time for ourselves and just getting out on the trail.
Well, I believe that, that you learn more from your failures than you do your successes. And plus, the Bible in the book of Proverbs, it says, "A just man falleth 7 times, but riseth up again." The number 7 in the Bible is actually the number of completion. In other words, what the Bible says is that every time a just man falls down, he gets up again. You know, and that's the key to success, is that when you do fall, and you're going to fall, you're going to fail, you're going to, not succeed. But when you do, get back up again. You're only a failure when you stay down.
If you look at your hikes on the PCT and the AT, you have any funny wildlife or weather stories that you could share with the listeners?
Let's see. Well, weather on the PCT, I hiked a little bit later in the year, and so it got very, very hot in the Mojave Desert. A lot of people mistake the PCT in the first 700 miles is called the desert section of the PCT, but that's really a misnomer. It's really the Mojave. You only go through just a small portion of the Mojave Desert, and that's right before you get to Kennedy Meadows. It was so just extremely hot in that section, and I had ran out of water. I think I told this story the last time we were on, but I'd run out of water, and so I got dehydrated. I got just heat exhaustion, everything, and just stumbling around on the trail. And that's when I found that a gallon of water underneath a bush, and that's the only thing that really saved my life. But it can get really hot, or in Texas. I mean, and like, one of the good things about the AT being a green tunnel is that you don't have to worry about the sun beating down on you all the time. And but boy, on the PCT, especially during that desert section of the Mojave, the heat was just unbearable. Cold. I didn't really get real cold. It was a low snow year, the year that I did the PCT, and so I didn't experience a lot of cold weather and a lot of snow in the Sierras, which is a real bad, it's a real bad circumstance that a lot of hikers have to go through, the snow. And so I didn't have to experience a lot of cold weather. And then on the AT, I think there was just recently, there was just one night where it got down like in the 30s. My sleeping quilt worked good, and I had everything on. I mean, just everything on. And so that kept me warm. So heat, cold, rain. Oh my goodness. It rained only twice when I did my PCT hike, and until I got to Washington. Of course, Washington is known for just being rainy all the time. And when I got to Washington, and especially on the very end of the hike, it rained just constantly. And we had to, there was a couple of guys that I hike with at the end of my journey, and it rained so much, and we were going up into the North Cascades, and so, the rain would turn into snow. And so we decided to go into a little trail town called Winthrop, about 30 miles from the Canadian border, and just wait out a storm and everything. And then, I think after 3 days, the storm subsided, and we went back on the trail and finished, went to the terminus. And so rain, when I was on the Ireland Way, there was one time where it just rained constantly all day long, and my rain outfit wetted out. And
Oh no.
yeah, and because I mean, I was just trying to get as far as I could, and then it started getting dark and in nighttime, and the temperature just started dropping, and I started feeling hypothermia coming on, and I mean, when you're experiencing hypothermia, and I started
Yeah.
shaking uncontrollably, and I just got so cold. And Jason, it was so bad that when I went by this farmhouse, now bear in mind, I mean, here's an American over in Ireland. I went to this farmhouse and I knocked on the door, and this guy came to the door, and I said, "Sir," I said, I am hiking the." Of course, she could tell that I wasn't Irish, you know,
Yeah.
and I said, "I'm hiking the Ireland way," and I said, I'm freezing half to death. I said, "It's raining." I said, "Is there any way that I can just step inside your house so I can get out of the rain?" You know, and he saw the desperation on my face, and really, I was going into hypothermia, and so he told me, "Man," he said, I really feel for you." And he said, I'd love to invite you in." He said, "But my wife and I are just about to walk out the door." He said, we're celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary. And he says, we've got an appointment, or a reservation at a restaurant." And he said, "We're just about to go out the door." I said, "Well, I understand." I said, I appreciate you, being willing to let me come into your house.
Yeah.
Here I am, a stranger." He said, "But there is a hostel about 4 miles down the road." And he said, you could go there, I went, "Okay, 4 miles. I can do that."
Yeah.
And so I started taking off, and the more you exercise and the more active you are, the more your body heats up. And so I thought, well, if I walk real fast and not run, but walk real fast for 4 miles, I can keep my body temperature up until I get to this hostel. So anyway, I found this hostel, and I went into the door. And again, I told the guy, I said, "Look," I said, "I don't have any reservations. Is there any way I can just come inside and stay here, for the night?" And he says, "Sure." He said, "I don't have any rooms ready." He said, "But I'll send my wife and we'll get a room ready and everything." And
Oh,
so
nice.
I walked in there, and I mean, I was just shivering uncontrollably. And so anyway, when he finally got the room ready, I went in there. Jason, I took off all my clothes, jumped into the shower, and turned the water on as hot as it could get, and just stayed there until my body temperature rose. But that was scary. That was really scary. So those are a few weather related incidents that I experienced on my different trails. As far as wildlife,
I was going to ask you if you could combine your PCT and AT hikes and add it up, and you got a nickel for every time you had a mouse encounter, would you be a bazillionaire?
actually, I would be broke because
Yeah. Oh, really?
I didn't have any, none.
Really?
And listen to this now.
Yeah.
I only hung. Now, of course, when you're in the Sierras, it's required. I think it's something like a $500 fine if they find you without a bear canister with your food in it in the Sierras. And so I had to carry a bear canister, of course, in the Sierras. But everywhere else, you don't have to do that, and you have to hang your food, or they suggest that you hang your food. Jason, I hung my food one time on the whole
What?
PCT. I slept with it the rest of the time. Now, here's the key, okay? See, I think
Yeah.
the problem is a lot of these thru hikers, they eat in their tent, they're very sloppy, and they don't store their food, in Ziploc bags and stuff like that. And so, good night. mice and raccoons or whatever. I think Andrew Skirka calls them little bears, but little bears, they smell that and they come after it. And so what I've got is I always carry an op sack. Have you ever heard of that?
I have.
I think it's called odor-proof sack, but it's called an op sack. I always put all of my food in there and zip it up real good and sleep with it at night. And I had absolutely zero problems with little bears or big bears.
Man, it's funny that was your experience because, talking to John about, all of the stuff that he's done up in Washington, he's like, man, those little mice will just chew through people's tents like within like no time. And all of a sudden, you have mice running over your head trying to find stuff. And
I've heard
so, that was,
yeah.
So any other wildlife experiences?
I didn't have any problems with that. Now, one time when I was on trail, in fact, it was really crazy. You see most of the bears in the Sierras on the PCT, but I saw a bear in the desert section. I was walking down the trail and I heard this big, loud snap. It wasn't just a little twig; it was a big branch that snapped. And so I immediately looked to my right. And there was this big bear, and I mean, his rear, all I saw was his rear end, okay? But his rear end was, it was, wide. So it was a big bear. And he saw me before I saw him. And so as soon as he saw me, he just scooted out of there as quick as he could. And so he was running away from me. But man, when I saw him, the hairs on my body just stood on end, man. I was so freaked out, by seeing it, One time, years ago when I first started hiking, I hiked up in the Sierras and, I think it was around the Lake Tahoe area around in there, which is notorious for bears. I pitched my tent and it was really kind of rainy and windy that night, but something woke me up in the middle of the night and I heard this snorting, just like you said, you heard the bison, that big snort and everything.
Yeah.
I heard that in my tent. And so I thought, now I was in the Sierras, and so I had a bear canister, and it was about 100 yards away from not 100 yards, 100 feet away from my tent. So I didn't have any kind of food and anything in my tent. But what it was is the bear was just, he was sniffing around my tent to see if he could smell any food and stuff like that, and he didn't. And so he left. But man, I was in my sleeping bag and I thought to myself, well, Lord, I guess I'm coming home tonight.
Man.
But,
and it like, what are you going to do?
Nothing.
Yeah. It's like that bison. Yeah, he was smelling at my tent. I'm literally thinking, like, what am I going to do? Nothing. Just, I'm going to be the butt of a bunch of jokes if he kills me.
Yeah. So,
wow.
And then I guess the only other thing, I didn't see a lot of animals really on the PCT. It's crazy, but, I saw deer and I did see a couple of wolves just for a brief minute, man. It just, went out, went across the trail. And of course I saw, red fox and, different animals and raccoons, skunks, and stuff like that, but not very many on the PCT. I only saw now a lot of people when they do the PCT, they talk about, oh man, I saw 30 rattlesnakes. I saw 2. One of them was in the desert section. And again, he was more afraid of me than I was of him. And so he was backing up the whole time when I went by. And then up in Washington, of all places, I saw a rattlesnake on the side of the trail, a timber rattler. But other than that, I didn't see a lot of wildlife and stuff.
With all your experience of through hiking, what would be your advice that someone has this idea to go on a through hike? Not a Texas Lone Star hiking trail through hike, but a real proper, 2,000 mile plus through hike, but maybe is a bit scared to kind of take those steps. What advice would you give them?
Well, what I did is, whenever I caught the through hiking bug, and decided that I wanted to do a long distance through hike. Now, why in the world I I decided, I think I might go 2,653 miles. That was dumb on my part. But I said to myself, I'm gonna work up to it slowly. So I said to myself, there's a place called, I'm trying to remember, it's down in San Jose, California. I think it's called Samuel P. Taylor State Park. It's one of the largest state parks in California. But anyway, it got a lot of real nice hiking trails, and you can stay overnight and stuff like that. And so I said to myself, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to just spend one night in the wilderness and come back home. And so I did that. And again, I was pastoring at the time, and so I only had between Monday and Wednesday, we had a Wednesday night service, and so I only had just a few days where I could be away from my congregation. And so anyway, I did that, and so I was pretty successful. I learned how to put my tent up, and I learned, how to cook the food, and, all the stuff that hikers do. And then I said to myself, okay, next month I'm going to try 2 nights. And so I planned a 2-night trip. So I went out there 2 nights. And then, the next month I said, well, I'm going to try 3 nights. And so I did 3 nights. So anyway, I worked my way up to 5 nights. And so I said to myself, if I can spend the night, away from my house and in the wilderness for 5 days, then I could actually do a through hike, because basically that's what a through hike is. It's 5 days out in the wilderness, and then you go into a trail town. You get a motel room or you go to the hostel or whatever, and you resupply and you charge up all your electronics and stuff like that, and then you go back on the trail again. And so basically a through hike is just, a bunch of 5-day section hikes is what I so anyway, when I did succeed with doing it for 5 days, I said, well, if I can stay for 5 days, I can do a through hike. And so the year before I started in 2019, before I did my through hike of the PCT in 2020, I said to myself, I'm going to do section K, which was close to me, from Echo Lake to Donner Pass. It's about 72 miles. It's section K of the Sierra section of the PCT. I said to myself, I'm going to do that section of the PCT. And if I can do that, then I think that I could probably do the whole trail. And so I did it. And I was successful at it. So then the next year I got a permit, and then, took off on the through hike. And so my advice to, potential through hikers is just to take it slow and just work your way into it and see how long you can stay out. And then, like I said, if you can stay out 5 or 6 days in the wilderness, you can do a through hike,
No, sometimes you catch people making videos that are taking, going to attempt to do a through hike, and like they start the trail and like have no idea how to set up their tent or what what the purpose of some of their gear is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just amazed that.
Well, when I did the PCT, the first stop is called what is that creek? Oh man, my mind just went blank. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, but anyway, it's about 15 miles from the Mexico border on the PCT, and I was hiking next to this guy, and Jason, he had never put up his tent. In fact, he had never taken his tent out of the packaging.
Are you kidding me?
Yes, and he was starting his through hike. And I said, "You've got to be kidding! You've got to do what they call them different things: shakedown hikes,
Yeah, gear shakedowns,
whatever.
yeah.
You've got to do that before you attempt to do a 2,600-mile hike. You've got to do it."
And also like it's setting yourself up for success. Like everything on the trail is against you.
Yes.
Like put yourself in a situation to be successful. You should have just said, "Look, it's too late now, but start watching my videos on YouTube."
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's another thing. I watch videos of successful thru hikers constantly, and I wouldn't just oh, that's pretty, that's pretty scenery, and I can't wait to see that or whatever. But no, I watched them like a hawk. I mean, I looked at them.
No.
I'd say, okay, how did they do their pack and their trekking poles and their shoes? What shoes are they wearing? And I tried to notice every little detail, because I figured out if they were successful at their thru hike, if I do what they do, maybe I'll be successful as well.
No.
And so, I just watched YouTube videos constantly, and I still do.
Yeah, for sure. So this is actually a perfect timing that we're recording this last part of the episode. We did the first 2 hours, what was it, about 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, and now we're wrapping up with this one. You just celebrated your 5-year anniversary of hiking the PCT,
Yeah.
and you did a little section to celebrate. So my first question is, what kicked off the idea to celebrate and get on the trail, and how all that kind of came to be?
Well, I lived in Southern California for 2 or 3 years. I owned a condo for about 10 years when I was living up in the San Francisco Bay Area. But I owned a condo down in Southern California, and I rented it out during the summer, during the season, and so that I would have something to retire when I got to retirement age. And so when I got to retirement age, my wife and I moved down to Southern California and moved into our condo. And it gets so hot down there. We could only take about 2 or 3 summers, and we decided to move back to the Bay Area where it's a lot cooler. And so. But the thing about it is, all of our doctors are down in Southern California, which is 500 miles from the San Francisco Bay Area where we live. And so what we try to do is we try to get all of our doctor's appointments around at the same time, so that we can go down to Southern California, stay down there for about a month or two, and get all of our doctor's appointments, taken care of at one time. And so while I was down there in Southern California with doctor's appointments, I thought to myself, I'd like to just start at the very beginning of the PCT. I'd never been back down there, in 5 years since I started it. I hadn't been back to it. So I thought, that would be good. It's been 5 years since I've been to the southern terminus. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll, take a little short hike. And so I decided to go about, 40, 50, 60 miles of the PCT, at the very beginning, just to celebrate my 5-year anniversary. And so while I was down in Southern California, I developed a good friend, hiking friend, Mike Marmalade is his trail name, Lawrence. He lives down in the San Diego area. We've done, some hiking before. Since I was down in Southern California, I invited him to come with me. And so we went together and did a hike from the southern terminus right there on the Mexican border to Mount Laguna, which is about 42 miles, something like that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, had a great time. It wasn't a real strenuous hike or anything like that. So, but just to celebrate. And like I said, it was the first time I'd been back to that area in 5 years. And so a lot of nostalgia, just flooded my soul,
Yeah. So real quickly, does your friend have a YouTube channel that you could give a shout out to?
Yes.
The listeners can check it out.
Yes. His YouTube channel is Marmalade Outdoors. And just real good guy, real good hiker. Just a real good friend of mine.
Nice. Wonderful. So what was the expectations of the experience versus the reality? Of the whole celebrating the 5-year anniversary, the 40-mile hike.
Like I said, it was very nostalgic. Like what was funny is I would get to an area and I'd say to myself, I remember that tree. I remember that rock, and so, you remember scenes that you went to or that you saw. And I don't know, it just kind of brought back those feelings of your first, I call the PCT, my first love, because that was my first thru hike that I did. And so, just like you remember your first kiss, you remember your first hug and stuff like that.
Yep.
It's just when you're on the PCT or when I was, doing that nostalgia hike, I guess, those feelings just kind of came back on you and you thought, wow, this was great,
But, the video that you made of this, I watched it. And what was so neat about it is you have the today walking past that part of the trail.
Yeah.
And then you have the old footage of you walking past that trail, like that moment or that part of the trail, that rock, that tree, that section. And it was neat to see, the version of you on, starting out on the PCT and then, like, 5 years later. That's a pretty spectacular video to the listeners. So definitely you have to check it out.
Yeah. It's funny. I had one guy comment, said, "Hey Rev, who is that beardless young skinny guy in the black and white figure?" I said, that was my younger mini me, I guess, but it was really funny. I went back to the original when I hiked it 5 years previous and took those clips and everything and kind of how do you say that? Juxtaposition and juxtaposed, seeing a like Highway 8 or Interstate 8 today and what it looked like 5 years ago. But Jason, at the very end of that trip, it dawned on me, that the trail really hasn't changed that much. Now, there were some changes, but it hadn't changed that much. I realized, well, what changed was me. 8 months after I finished the PCT, I had a heart attack. And then 3 months after that, I had 3 stents put in my heart, my right coronary artery. Then a year later, I had a stent put in my aorta to relieve an aneurysm. And so all these things had happened to me in the previous, in between the time that I finished the PCT until now. And I thought, man, I've come a long ways in 5 years. The trail hasn't. The trail's the same. But man, I sure have changed. Gotten older.
You mentioning that, like, this whole next section of the podcast was probably one of the most emotional for me that I've put together. I had Mr. Berry came on episode 11 and 12, Lost Hiker at Guadalupe Mountains. He was lost for 5 days. Putting that episode together, I got a bit emotional, and then putting this last section of our podcast, and you start to think, at our age, at some point, we won't be hiking and backpacking anymore.
Right.
Like, it'll all be over for us. So it was emotional to put this together, but I think it's also important for the listeners to hear, and also for the other hikers that are of our age and maybe kind of going through this part will help them. I think it helps to kind of give it some thought and kind of, I don't know, not move past it, but just embrace it and embrace it for what it is, and don't stop.
Yeah. I did a video on some things that motivates me personally when I do a through hike or a hike of any kind. What are some things that motivate me? And one of the things that I mentioned in the video is that I realize that there's a lot of people that would love to do what I'm doing right now. Hiking a trail, getting out there and sleeping in the wilderness, but they can't because of health reasons. I have a lot of people, a lot of subscribers that comment to me and they say, Rev, I could never do what you're doing, but I love that you're doing it because I'm living vicariously through you. Well, I mean, that motivates me.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that motivates me is I'll do it as long as I can do it, because I realize that one day I'm not going to be able to do it. And so you might as well do it while you can. And plus, another thing that kind of motivates me is, I know it's kind of funny, but one of my favorite movies is The Shawshank Redemption. I mean, it just really motivates me. But I love it when Red and what's the other guy's name? Andy Dufresne. When Andy Dufresne and Red are in the prison yard, and Andy Dufresne looks at Red and says, it boils down to this: either get busy living or get busy dying. And man, I mean, whoa, that just struck me. And I thought to myself, that's the key right there. I can either sit down on my couch and live the rest of my years watching TV and letting my mind become mush and my body become mush, or I can get out and get on a trail and just go as far as I can on it. So the choice is up to you. Get busy living or get busy dying.
And so when I look at you, and I've been following you for a while, I would argue that you've accomplished more than probably most hikers even dream of. And kind of as you near the end of this hiking and backpacking journey, how have you started to process this shift? Or like, maybe you're not able to do some of the things that you used to or want to do.
Well, believe it or not, I can feel my age, just from the PCT. At the end of the PCT, I'm not kidding you, Jason, I was in the best shape of my life. Now, I didn't know that I had a blockage. I had 3 blockages in my right coronary artery while I was hiking the PCT. I don't know if I shared this with you or with your listeners, but the doctor said that I had developed coronary. I'm sorry. It's called collateral arteries, which they're arteries that actually your body grows to bypass blockages in your heart. And so while I was on the PCT, those arteries bypass those blockages that I had. So, but I was in the best shape of my life. I mean, I was running up mountains and not even hardly breathing hard. But when I did when I did the AT last year, started it, I could just tell physically. I was walking up a little bit slower, not real slow, but a little bit slower than I normally would. It takes a little bit longer for my muscles to recover. You used to, you'd get to camp, you'd sleep and you'd eat, or you'd eat and then you sleep. And then the next day, your muscles would recover and you'd just boom, hit the trail. But, your muscles are really a lot sore the older you get. And so, yeah, I can tell that I'm aging a little bit, but I'm going to try to fight father time as hard as I can,
So would you say there's a sense of peace settling in, or, is there still a tug to get one more big trail in before you hang up the backpack?
Yes, there's always that tug to, I've got one more trail left in me. That's what a lot of people ask me. It says, "Hey, Rev, why don't you do this trail or why don't you do that trail?" One of their favorite trails and everything. And I tell them, I said, well, that's on my bucket list. Hopefully I can get to it, but I always have something. Whenever I get off of a trail, I'm always thinking to myself, okay, what's the next challenge? What's the next trail? And again, that kind of motivates. That's one of the things that'll keep you from having that. A lot of people talk about post-trail depression, Well, the best way to get rid of the post-trail depression is start planning another hike right after you get through with the previous hike.
I tell you what, if I don't have a challenge or something that I'm looking ahead to, I'm laying in bed, so yeah, I definitely totally understand what you're saying about that.
Yeah.
So this happened to me. Guadalupe Mountains, the listeners know it's my heaven on earth. It's my favorite place in the world. And I've hiked in a lot of places. I just love it. And I think we were talking before the podcast, whenever I leave the Guads, I'll get about 10, 15 miles away and I'll just park on the side of the road, open up my Outback, sit in a little cargo area and just look at her. People are, every once in a while somebody will drive by because there's not a lot of traffic on the roads and, ask, "Hey, are you okay?" Or, and I, most of the time I just weep because the park means so much to me that, is this the last time that I'll ever get to experience the trails and experience, what that park means to me. So as you start to think about this, and have we been kind of talking about, probably we can't perform like we used to, or this or that. Do you find yourself being a little more reflective on the outings that you have than what you used to, or is it no change yet?
During the, I guess you'd call it the off season or something, like October, November, I try to kind of finish up the hikes small hikes as well as big hikes, and so like from October to March or April is what I would call the hiking off season or something like that. I get nostalgic then and reflective, on what. In fact, I'd like to do a video at the end of the year, looking back on the previous year and all the accomplishments, hiking accomplishments that I had in the previous year. And again, it kind of motivates you for the next year, But yeah, you kind of get reflective. But But again, until I come to the day when I can't do a long distance hike or a hike of any kind, until I get to that day, I'm going to just constantly think to myself, okay, where are you going to go next? What's next?
Yeah.
And again, that kind of motivates you to keep on living.
Yeah, for sure.
I know some people that, and I know this one guy. He loves the PCT. And I mean, he just hikes it all the time, never any other trail. And I think to myself, there are other trails out there.
Yeah.
I love the PCT, and like I said, it's my first love. But there's other trails that I want to do, you know.
Yeah.
And so you just have to constantly motivate yourself. Okay, what's next? What's next?
Yeah. What do you want your trail legacy to be, even if it's just amongst friends or people who know you best?
Who? Man, that's a hard question. Well, of course, I'd like to leave a legacy to the coming generation. I want them to be able to enjoy the outdoors like I'm enjoying now. That's why I take my grandkids. I love to take them out backpacking and overnight, so they can experience the same things that I have experienced. I guess if anything, I would want my legacy to be that he didn't quit when he got older, that he just kept doing it as long as he could.
Nice.
I guess that would be the biggest legacy that I have. I guess, Jason, the one thing that really motivates me a lot is my dad was the hardest working person that I know of. He worked for the Coca-Cola company in Mobile, Alabama, basically his whole life. And just put in long hours, and just a real hard worker, and was always in good shape. He had an accident on the job and had to have surgery, and the company basically kind of talked him into retiring early. I mean, he's only like 52 years old when he retired. And it really played with my dad because he was active his whole life and everything. And really messed with his mind. And so he just basically gave up, and he started just, eating and not getting any exercise. And he started gaining a lot of weight and stuff like that. And of course that started affecting his joints, and he couldn't get around, very well. And so, I would come, and again, I was living out of town, away from him at the time. And so when my wife and I and our family would come to visit him, I'd tell him, I'd say, Dad, let's go out and, walk around the block, or walk around in the retirement home here and stuff like that. And he'd say, oh, not Mike, I just don't feel like it. My knees, hurt and stuff like that. And, I would just beg him. I said, well, Dad, let's just walk to the end of the driveway, just get active, and he basically just gave up with life, and just kind of threw in the towel early. And that has always kind of haunted me or motivated me, that I don't want to do like that. I don't want to just sit back and do nothing. I want to try to challenge myself and just do as much as I can do.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone, or what advice would you give to someone who's afraid that their best trail days are behind them?
Just do what you can. There's some people that will never be able to do a long distance through hike. And so I always tell my subscribers who comment, on my YouTube channel, I tell them, just do what you can. Just say to yourself, every morning I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk around the block. And then once you walk around the block and it doesn't hurt anymore, say, well, I'm going to go around 2 blocks. And so then the next morning, get up and go around 2 blocks, and then keep challenging yourself to do more than you did the previous day, or the previous week, or previous month, or whatever. But just challenge yourself to do as much as you can.
Yeah. And also to the listeners and just for us, like, you don't have to have this massive bazillion mile epic, not epic, whatever, but like, you don't have to have this massive thing to have a wonderful experience, to
Right.
short hikes, couple miles, flat, no elevation, to get out there and just hear the trees, hear the wind blowing through the trees, hear the birds. And some of my most memorable times in the quads are just one of the easiest hikes in the park, Smith Springs. As soon as I get there, it's tradition. I go hike the 1 mile to the spring that's out in the middle of the desert, drink some of the water, and just chill. And it's some of the most, magical moments that I've ever had in the park.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that would definitely be mine.
Yeah. Just do what you can. That's my philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. And you think about it also, like, thinking that you have to have, like, don't give yourself excuses not to do it. Like,
Right.
oh, it's only going to be a mile, that's all I can do. Who cares? Get
Yeah.
out. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's funny that you said that. I forgot where I was. I think I was taking like a short hike, maybe like a week or something like that. And I even forget. Oh, I know where I was. I was on the PCT, just doing a section hike. I forget, somewhere in the Sierras, I think, somewhere around in there. And I was walking down the trail. I was by myself. I was walking down the trail, and I saw this guy coming down from the mountains out of some woods and stuff. And the closer he got to me, I realized that he had what do you call those braces? When people have polio and they have those metal braces in
Yeah,
their
yeah,
walk.
yeah.
And this guy had these metal braces on his legs and on his arms, and he was walking like this down the trail. And I looked at him and I thought, oh my goodness. If he can hike, and I'm sure he wasn't doing a through hike,
Right.
but he was climbing these mountains and everything. And I'm thinking to myself, here's this guy with polio probably, with these braces on his legs, on his arms. If he can do that, surely I can do that. And so, it you have to find things that kind of motivate you to more than what you think you can do.
And get out of your head, right? We
Yeah.
talked about earlier that mental battle. And
Right.
I try to talk myself out of, because I try to go hike every Sunday in the Lone Star Hiking Trail, and I come up with every excuse not to go, uh, everything. But the moment that I get on the trail,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, thank you for not caving into all this,
Yeah.
why not to go? So yeah, I and how inspiring to see someone just slaying the trail.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, as we start to wrap up, the last 3 questions. The first 2 are tradition that I always ask to hikers. Um, So, are you ready?
Yes.
No, these are good questions, not lightning round questions. All right. What is one piece of gear you would recommend to a new hiker or backpacker? So if I had nothing and I come to you and say, Rev, I want to I've watched your videos and you are so inspiring. I want to get into this, but what is one piece of gear that is a must for me to get right? What would it be?
I guess your backpack, because you have to use that to carry all your stuff. But
Yeah.
in the big mistake, and I made this mistake when I first got back into backpacking, is you always want to get a bigger pack than you actually need. And so therefore, when you do that, automatically you think to yourself, man, I got this 70-liter pack. I got to get some stuff to fill it up with.
Yep.
And then you're carrying 50 or 60 pounds around with you. So, yeah, I would think a good lightweight backpack would be the one piece of gear that I would suggest that hikers get, and really do their research. Where the pockets are. Where your water bottle pockets and things like that, and the mesh pocket on the back or the front, whatever you call it, and whether it's a frameless pack or a pack that's got like a trampoline on the back or whatever. Do your research and get a backpack. But again, do not get a backpack that's bigger than you think you'll need. Otherwise, I guarantee you'll have a tendency to start putting stuff in there just to fill it up, and that's what you
Yep.
definitely don't want to do.
It's funny you say that because my good friend John, his wife, Megan, I think she worked at a state park in Alaska, and then she just decided after she graduated, she's going to do the PCT.
Mm-hmm.
So she went to REI, and the gentleman, and
Oh.
this was on this is yeah. This is on we recorded, I don't remember what episode she was, but we had 3 or 4 episodes with her talking about her hiking experience. And she said, yeah, she went into REI and the guy talked her into to do the PCT, an 85
Oh,
liter backpack.
no. I'm
And
sure that salesman probably had done the PCT before. Yeah, right.
yeah. And so it's funny, we go on through the kind of the episode. And so when she gets to the end of the story of doing the PCT, I said, so after, and shortly after she got to the PCT, I don't know, she gave up the backpack and bought something that's like a 40 liter that you would
Right.
need. And so I said, after you finished, did you go back up to that REI and find that guy and just punch him in the face? And she's like, no, I didn't, but I wanted to.
Yes. Amen.
And she is the most kind-hearted person you'll ever meet. So it was funny to
Yeah.
hear her, getting mad, like, man, I didn't even need that, spend all that money. And
Yeah. Yeah. So
all
yeah,
right, same. Oh, go
backpack.
ahead.
Yeah, just a backpack, I think is probably because that's what you're going to be carrying all your stuff in. Yeah.
You want to see my gear game changer piece of gear that I have a lot of Hyperlight Z packs, whatever.
Uh-huh.
This right here has changed the way I backpack, and
Okay.
it's the Trekker Joe's water bottle sleeve, and it fits right here on your shoulder straps of your backpack.
Uh-huh.
So you can
Uh-huh.
have 1 or 2, because I can't reach back and grab my water.
How
And
come your
so,
shoulder
no, just because I'm 52.
okay.
I can't do it or put it back in. So I saw these,
Okay.
and I have like 8 or 9 of them now. And man, just right here,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
just Yeah, so that piece of gear right there is what
Yeah.
I would recommend. Not, I know it should be like, you hear that people say, oh, it should be something between you and the ground, so like shoes or this or that, or you make a very great argument, get that backpack dialed in
Yeah.
and comfortable for you. But mine is that Trekker Joe's. I
Yeah.
I have probably 8 or 9 backpacks back here all over the
Uh-huh.
place, and you know, they're good. I mean, I it makes, the mileage that I do comfortable, and I can do it. But
Yeah.
that water bottle sleeve holder is changed my life.
Yeah. 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 What I've heard that they do is, you know, if you have all the weight on your back, then of course it's going to pull you in backwards. But if you can put some of that weight on your front, it will even it out.
Man, you nailed it, and I'm glad you brought it up. That is another thing. When in Texas, we have massive water carries. And so
Yeah.
having those 2 liters in the front, having,
Yeah.
2, it is, yeah,
The
it's
difference.
a game changer. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That weight on the backpack.
Yeah.
All right, same question. Instead of gear, it's one piece of safety advice that you would get to someone that's a new hiker or backpacker.
Safety advice.
Mm-hmm.
Don't when you're younger, you think you're invincible, and especially younger hikers, and they think they're invincible, and like for example, if there's like a you're on a cliff and there's a like a break in the trail or something like that, and you say to yourself, I think I can jump over that. When you when you get older, you go, I don't think so. And so
Yeah.
you have more sense about you than taking risk. And so I guess that would be my big safety advice is be careful of the risk you take. It's not worth it. Um, like a stream crossing or something. You get out there, and especially like in California in the Sierras when the snow is melting. I mean, those rivers can just be torrential, coming down the hill. And you say to yourself, well, I think I can cross this river. And before you know it, you can get swept down, stream real easy and be knocked off your feet. And so, just don't take risks because your life is just not, I mean, your life is worth more than just, hiking a trail. So,
Yeah.
just be careful not to take too many risks.
Absolutely. I think my piece of safety advice to someone new is always let someone know where you're going,
Yeah, that's a
when
good
you're
one.
gonna start, when you're expected to be back,
Yeah.
and when you give someone, and you don't need any money to me to tell somebody I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that, right? It's free. It's just you telling someone. And when you give someone that itinerary, don't change it.
Yeah, right. Unless you tell them.
Yes. So, like for me, I went out to Trailhead. I think it was number 6. It was flooded on the Lone Star Hiking Trail, and so I texted my wife and said, "Hey, I'm gonna probably drive over to Trailhead 9, but we'll probably be finished about the same time. Just wanted to let you know." Well, I don't know if the text never went through or she didn't respond. I just drove home because I'm like, she didn't acknowledge that she received the new itinerary, so I'm not.
Right.
I'm not I'm just gonna go home. And yeah, probably I could have called or other things, but yeah, I just went home because yeah, it's that's the biggest thing. Like you see these people going missing. Well, no
Mm-hmm.
one knew where they went, or they had the itinerary but then they went and did something else. Like I think you nailed it too. Just make sure that if you're changing something, tell them.
Yeah. Along with that, I know this is probably kind of a little controversial, but I used to carry the Garmin InReach Mini. Just kind of kept it right here on my shoulder. And what it did is it sent out a ping. I had it set for 11 minutes, and I thought, that's just too often. So I think I had it send out a ping every hour. And my wife could actually go on the internet, on that website and find out exactly where I was by those pings. Now, again, this is probably kind of controversial, but I don't carry the Garmin InReach Mini anymore. On your iPhones, it will, I guess it's got a find me feature on your iPhone. And so my wife can, click on that and find me, and she can locate me by my iPhone. And so I'm using my iPhone now. Also, if I need to get in contact with her, even if there's no cell service anywhere, I can get on the satellite. And it works real good. And so actually my iPhone is replacing my Garmin InReach Mini. And one good thing is I don't have to pay a subscription fee.
Yeah. So I'm still a Garmin person, and one of the main reasons is if something happens to my phone, I have that redundancy, that backup that I can still reach out. All right. Are you ready for the very last question of the podcast? This is the most important question. It is my favorite question.
Okay.
All right. So if you could step back and look at your hiking and backpacking journey, everything that you've done, what is the one message that you would want to leave to your family and to everyone that supported you along the way?
Oh, to look back. Well, number one, would be that I miss them. And in fact, that's one of the hardest, emotional and mental things that I have to deal with when I'm on trail is I miss my family. I miss my wife. I miss my grandkids and my kids, something terrible when I'm out on the trail. And so I would want them to know that I miss them and think about them all the time when I'm on trail, But then I think another thing is, Jason, when I'm out, my wife is not in real good health. And so she could never, people ask me, says, did your wife ever go with you on backpacking trips? She's just not able, she's just health-wise, she's just not able to do it. And so when I'm climbing up a mountain and I get to the very top and I look out and just see the most magnificent view that you've ever seen in your entire life, I think to myself, honey, I wish you were here to see this with me. And that's the one thing that I really regret, that my wife is not there to share that moment with me.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's thing or not, but that's what I think of when I'm out there.
That's perfect. Yeah. Awesome.
I wish, really and truly, I wish that all of my subscribers, anybody that knows me or anything, I wish they were with me to see through me what I'm looking at that particular time. And again, that's why I do these videos, to show them, hey, but you know yourself, videos really doesn't do it justice. You're out there and you see a sunrise or a sunset, and like I say, you can see forever, and you try to record it, but it just doesn't show up the way that you can see it through your own two eyes.
And it's funny that you said earlier, and you're absolutely right, that if you get that one message from somebody that you don't even know that just says thank you.
Yeah.
That I'm not able to do any of this, and through your videos, through all the effort that goes into getting these things published, like I'm able to experience that. It makes it all worth it,
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. If just one person said to me, Rev, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. I can't do what you're doing, but I'm living it through you. That makes it all worthwhile. And it is an effort to put out videos, let me tell you.
Oh, yes. To the listeners, it's a pain, but it's worth it. And I've had family members, message me, because I post stuff on Facebook, or friends on Facebook that have gotten into hiking and backpacking because they've seen it, and man, it makes it all worth the while. So
Yeah, definitely.
all right, Rev, let me tell you, I already told you this once or twice, but if this was my last podcast, this is how I would want it to end. I value the effort that you put into your channel. I value your experience and what you have to say. If I ever had to stand up and say what I thought your legacy would be, is it someone that always gave more to our community than took. And I can't thank you enough. This means a lot to me for you coming on the podcast. And, golly, we're almost 3 hours and of your precious time. And I can't thank you enough.
Well, as long as like I said, as long as it helps one person, it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I will let you get back to your day. And again, I thank you. And I don't know if you read the fine print. I don't know if we've talked about it, but coming on the podcast, it was, we one day will share the trail together. So I am definitely going to do my best to make that happen. So,
amen. Sounds good. Thank you, Jason.
Yes, sir. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
All righty, I will.
And that wraps up another exciting episode of the Trailblazing Texas Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode today, and stay tuned for our next episode, where we will pick back up where we left off and guarantee to uncover many more hiking gems and share many more tips to enhance your experience on the trail. Until then, happy trails and happy hiking.